Hello and welcome to this episode of Inside the PSC, where we take a look at the inner workings of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. I'm your host, Alexis Weimer, and with me today is the highly respected and experienced Mary Friend, the Director of the Gas Pipeline Safety Division. We're very happy to have you back, Mary.
I am very glad to be here.
We've got a lot of good information to dig into, but before we do, we're going to take a quick look at a video from the Chairman, Charlotte Lane, about the Engineering Division.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Lane, Chairman of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. When the Public Service Commission needs to know how something works, or just as importantly, how it should work, we turn to our Engineering Division. When Governor Justice asked us to determine whether the state's fire hydrants were in working order, it was our engineering staff that got the job done. They evaluated the information and wrote a thorough analysis of the situation. Our engineers provide expertise on a range of utility-related questions. How should the sewer system operate? What's the correct pressure for a water line? Is this gas line properly monitored? Is that electric circuit reliable? The Commission's professional engineers, engineering analysts, and technicians have decades of experience. They know the details of complex utility systems, ranging from the big picture like area-wide electric demand forecasts to the most mundane details, such as the safe gas pressure for your home. If we have a technical question about a regulated utility, one of those experts will be able to answer it. In addition to providing technical assistance to the Commission and Commission staff, they also conduct investigations. They evaluate distressed or failing utilities, provide technical assistance on rate cases, review construction plans for proposed new facilities, and work with the West Virginia Infrastructure Council to ensure that new water and sewer projects are appropriate and necessary. They also investigate customer complaints and provide technical assistance to the hundreds of small water and sewer systems serving our state. Our engineers ensure your utility service is accurately measured and metered. They test customer meters and verify that utilities' meter testing practices and personnel are properly certified. The Public Service Commission couldn't manage without them.
Well, that was a great video. The engineering team certainly works very hard, just as hard as our gas pipeline safety division, Mary. So last time you were here, we just brushed the surface on what you guys do, and I'd really like to dig into some more detail about it. So can you give us a little bit of background information about your division and maybe some things that the people might not know that you do?
Sure. Actually, the Gas Pipeline Safety Division is a relatively new division within the Commission. We were formed in 2013 after the Sissonville event. Prior to that, we were part of engineering. We've been part of the Transportation Division. So we've moved around a little bit, but we now are our own division. We regulate approximately 17,500 miles of pipeline in the state of West Virginia. That includes gas and hazardous liquid gathering and transmission lines. It includes gas distribution and includes gas distribution. Okay, that was it. I got it. Hazardous liquid gas transmission. That certainly is not all the pipelines in the state, because we only regulate what we're allowed to by the federal government. Okay. So while we regulate 17,500 miles, there is certainly more mileage than that in the state that is unregulated. What we do is we make sure that the people adhere to the federal pipeline safety regulations. We monitor design, construction, operations, and maintenance of the pipelines.
Very interesting. Seems like a lot of work.
It's interesting work.
Yeah, I bet it is. So your staff must undergo a lot of training and have a lot of skills to be able to do all that. You said 17,500 miles?
17,500.
That's a lot, so I'm sure they're very experienced.
So, well, actually, we have a lot of folks who came from the industry, which actually helps, because as with anything, you have to learn the lingo in order to do the job. But my staff is trained. Every new inspector has to take a minimum of 6 courses out in Oklahoma City at the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which we call PHMSA, at the PHMSA Training Center in Oklahoma City. They have to complete that first round of 6 or 7 classes within 3 years of starting work.
Wow.
And they have to receive a passing grade in order to get credit for having taken the class. once they pass those initial 6 classes, there are an additional 20 classes they can take in a variety of fields. So for example, to be a hazardous liquid inspector, you have to take the hazardous liquid portion. There are all kinds of facilities that in the state that you have to learn about. There are all kinds of programs that PHMSA requires an operator to have that my folks need to be trained for. So they take classes in pigging, they take classes in public awareness, they take classes in pipeline integrity management, they take classes in control room. And each class then increases their level of competence and increases what they can inspect.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of like recruiting and educational background, do they have to have an education before they'd come to work for you?
No, they don't. We will accept people who have no background in the industry, although it is a benefit. Currently, I am tied by the legacy titles that exist within my organization. That's when we came from engineering. But you don't have to be an engineer. You don't even have to be a scientist. Some of my guys come from having worked in industry with only a high school education.
That's awesome. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for opportunity if people want to work in the gas pipeline field.
The STEM part of it does give you some additional information and a step up, but it's simply being able to have a mechanical background and understand what the regulations say.
So let's get into what exactly does inspecting a pipeline mean? How do you go about doing it? What do you look for? What's that process look like?
Well, when we talk about inspecting pipelines, people think we actually go out and walk all these pipelines. No, we don't do that.
Okay.
What we do is we monitor the operator's compliance with the federal pipeline safety regulations.
Okay.
There are all kinds of programs, like I mentioned earlier, that the operator has to have, things such as public awareness and public education. They have to have integrity management programs. So our job is to go in and look at the records, their records, and it's not looking at every record, it's looking at select records to make sure they're adhering to the pipeline safety regulations. So, and we do a bunch of specialized inspections. We may spend a week doing an integrity management inspection. We may spend 2 days doing a drug and alcohol inspection. So not only do we inspect the pipelines, we're inspecting these programs.
Wow. So if there's a leak or something, would you guys come out for that, or is it mainly new construction?
We don't generally do leaks. Leaks are what the operator has to deal with. They're called in and reported, and the operator needs to repair them. And of course, there's a big push on the environmental side to reduce methane emissions. So it's up to the operator to repair those and help reduce those emissions. They do report to us the number of leaks they have over the course of a year. We get that in the form of an annual report that they submit to us, and we can review and see how they're doing. Distribution operators, even transmission operators, are allowed to grade leaks, and the grade depends on how adversely the public might be affected and the safety that's involved with it. So a leak in downtown Charleston might be a grade 1 that needs to be repaired right now.
Right.
But a leak out in the middle of a field may not be as high a grade, and they may be able to repair that in a longer interval.
Okay. So what's the difference between inspecting gas and hazardous liquids?
There's a lot of similarities. The rules are very similar in some ways, but there are differences in how gas is transported versus how hazardous liquid is transported. Gas uses compressors, hazardous liquid uses pumps.
Okay.
Some of the facilities, some of the design features are a little bit different because of the differences in the product. When you have a gas leak, obviously the gas escapes. If you have a hazardous liquid leak, it just, once the leak and the pressure is removed, nothing else comes out of the pipe. But the regulations are subtly different, so you have to understand the differences between them. A lot of the programs are the same. They still have integrity management programs. They still have public awareness programs they have to do, drug and alcohol, but some of the regulations are slightly different.
Okay. And just for some of the viewers at home, what is a hazardous liquid?
Hazardous liquid is defined as petroleum products, crude oil, petroleum products, highly volatile liquids such as ethane or propane, and it also includes carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, if it's carried in as a supercritical liquid, is considered a hazardous liquid.
Okay, that's interesting.
And what's interesting on that is the fact that, of course, the carbon dioxide sequestration that people are pushing Any CO2 carried within the pipelines those pipelines would fall under our purview.
Okay. Okay. Wow, you guys cover a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's got to be a lot of pressure too, because some of that stuff can be really dangerous.
The pressure in the pipelines, we have things that run at ounces of pressure. So the distribution lines in a lot of the cities is in ounces of pressure, and some of the big Marcellus lines operate at about 1,440 pounds of pressure.
Okay. Okay. So when you speak about intrastate and interstate lines, can you define those, and do you regulate both of those?
PHMSA regulates both of those.
Okay.
I do not have the ability to inspect interstate lines.
Okay.
Interstate lines are defined in code as anything that is FERC certificated.
Okay.
So it's something that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has said, yes, there's a public need for this, you can build it. On the other hand, intrastate are just pipelines that run within the state. We don't certificate, the Public Service Commission does not certificate, so to speak. We do issue a certificate that, yeah, they can build it. But the interstates can cross, or intrastates can cross state lines. So it could be intrastate in West Virginia, it could be the same line as intrastate in Ohio or intrastate in Pennsylvania, but because it's not FERC certificated, it is not considered interstate.
Okay. And PHMSA, you said, is the agency you guys work alongside.
PHMSA's agency, it's the United States Department of Transportation Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's why we call it PHMSA.
Okay, that makes sense. So do you all often communicate with their team throughout jobs?
They actually, yes, they actually monitor us.
Okay.
Just like we go in and inspect the operators every year, PHMSA comes in and inspects us.
Oh, okay.
We are funded, up to 80% of the money in our organization comes from PHMSA.
Wow.
We get no state money to support our organization.
Wow.
We're funded entirely through PHMSA grants or through an assessment fee that we charge the operators. The operators are paying for the privilege of us coming in to do the inspections. But PHMSA does come in and monitor us every year. They give us a grade. They review our procedures. They inspect us. They're making sure that we're doing the inspections we need to do. They make sure that we're writing the violations that we need to. They make sure that my inspectors are trained the way they need to be. So yeah, we're inspected every year by PHMSA.
There's a lot of steps that go into making sure these pipelines are safe.
Absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
That's great. We're going to take another quick break and watch another video from our chairman about budget planning with your utilities.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Lane, Chairman of the West Virginia Public Service Commission. I would like to suggest a way to make it easier to pay utility bills. Planning to stretch your dollars might not make for an exciting afternoon, but it makes a lot of sense. When I'm going to spend money, I eliminate unknowns. To help your planning, many utilities offer what they call budget billing. These plans aim to smooth out billing during higher cost months to make those bills easier to handle. If your home has a gas furnace, then you can expect higher gas bills in the winter. If your home is air conditioned, then you might expect higher electricity bills in the summer. This is where the budget plan works. Utilities are aware that most of us are struggling, and they're interested in making life easier for you. So they're willing to give you one constant price each month for your utility bill. They'll average your yearly usage, then bill you one flat monthly rate all year long. Wouldn't it be nice to know you won't pay more for gas during an abnormally cold winter, or you won't have a higher electricity bill in the summer? Instead, each month you will pay a single and knowable amount. That's something you can budget for and count on. At the end of your payment year, your utility makes a final adjustment. If you've overpaid, they give you a credit for that amount for your next bill. If you've underpaid, then they bill you for the balance owed. Meantime, you have 12 months of knowing exactly what you have to pay for utilities. No more ups and downs and fluctuating bills. This idea makes a lot of sense. I use a budget plan with as many utilities as I can, including my water bill. It has worked for me, and I think it would work for you too. So why not give it a try? Let me encourage you to contact your utilities and see if they have a budget plan that will work for you. The answer is only a phone call or email away.
That was another great video. I know I use the budget plan with almost all of my utilities. Well, Mary, so we were talking about pipelines, and I want to touch on infrastructure. So recently the power company described challenges with outdated lines that they inherited from the coal companies. Do you guys deal with similar issues?
Oh, absolutely. If you think that gas first started being produced in the state in the 1850s and 1860s, although pipelines weren't used at that time to move the material, when I worked for an operator, some of the oldest pipelines we had were from the 1880s.
Oh my goodness.
And early pipelines were built out of wood.
Wow.
Materials have progressed to cast iron. They have progressed then to modern steel, to different types of plastics. But so some of the older lines are made of these older materials. The older materials degrade and corrode over time. The regulations, the current regulations, require steel pipelines to be coated with some sort of protective barrier on the outside to prevent corrosion. They're also required to have cathodic protection applied to them. And cathodic protection is a means of inducing an electrical current down the pipeline to help protect it and reduce corrosion. So modern pipelines had that, but anything prior to the regulations, which were put into place in 1970, didn't have those. So the pipe that was installed in the 1930s and the 1940s often had no coating. It was not cathodically protected, so they tended to corrode. Some of the pipelines were built to different standards. So yeah, we struggle with that all the time. The other problem with a lot of the lines is because they were production lines and attached to wells, the pressure has reduced over time. So the idea of being able to clean them or pig them to make sure that they're in good shape, you just can't do it. But yeah, we have a lot of problems with the older materials, and that's part of the reason the regulations were put into place. Operators have to monitor these lines by leak patrolling and patrolling them to make sure that they're safe.
Okay. Do they have to use different types of materials for different lines compared to natural gas and hazardous liquids, or is it all the same?
They can use, we use at this point basically steel and plastic. Plastic is limited to about 125 pounds of pressure. So a lot of people watching their local distribution company installing new lines, they're going to see them installing these yellow plastic lines. And those lines are perfectly safe for the pressures those lines operate at, but they are not suitable for the higher pressure transmission line. So the higher pressure, larger diameter transmission lines are built with steel.
Okay. So your team would go in if a company would have to come in and update their lines. Your team would be there?
Yes, we get from the operators what we call major construction reports. So if they're doing a pipe replacement or building new line that's in excess of $50,000, they send us a notice that they will be building this line, which allows us to go in and construct, or to watch them during construction. So we'll go in and look at the materials, we'll look at the process they're doing it. Pipelines have to be buried to a certain depth to protect them. So yeah, we go in and monitor that stuff.
What's the timeline look like on that?
For projects?
Yeah.
It depends, and especially for the distribution companies, it changes week to week because they may project that they're going to go in and replace this line here, but suddenly the line 2 miles away has developed a whole bunch of leaks. So the priority, and for the safety of the public, they go and replace that leaking line before they replace the other. So for the distribution lines, it's a constant juggle as to where they're working.
Okay. So I want to wrap back on the carbon dioxide transmission. How does that work? Where is it coming from?
Well, the carbon dioxide is actually usually from a result of the combustion.
Okay.
So they will take the carbon dioxide, and what the goal is to inject it back into the ground.
Okay.
I believe the last legislative session it was approved that the department, DEP, can regulate underground storage of the carbon dioxide so that they will re-inject it into the ground. Now, of course, if you think about it, what better place to put CO2 than in a rock formation that held gas for millions and millions of years.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
But it's the pipelines then that I would regulate that are transporting that CO2 from the point that it is created. I'm not going to say made. From the point it's created to the point it's injected underground.
Okay.
The other big one in the state that's being talked about now is the hydrogen. They are wanting to use hydrogen as an alternative fuel for certain things. Hydrogen is also covered by the pipeline safety regulations. So if you're transporting hydrogen, and there is about 1,500 miles of hydrogen lines in the United States. There are none in West Virginia, but there are 1,500 miles in the United States. So the idea is that those hydrogen lines would also be regulated. One of the big things right now with hydrogen is they are blending it with natural gas, up to 5% in a distribution system to be burned in your house.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. So you guys don't get involved if there's like a leak in a house or a building?
No, generally not. If there is a leak, the public awareness that an operator needs to do covers what customers should do if they smell gas in the house. Gas, natural gas, methane is an odorless, colorless gas. And so the distribution companies add that sour, rotten egg, skunky smell to the gas to make people be able to detect it. It's called mercaptan in most instances.
Okay.
So they add the mercaptan. So if you're smelling gas inside the house, you need to do a couple things. You need to get out of the house. You need to call the gas company if you can't get hold, and the gas company provides you the information where their emergency number is. If you can't get hold of the gas company, call 911. Don't turn on any light switches. Don't use your phone inside. Don't turn on your oven. Just get out of the house and call from a safe distance away and have the gas company come and investigate.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of risk with a gas leak, like an explosion or a fire.
Explosions and fires. A lot of times you will see on the news these big catastrophic transmission leaks that cause fireballs. Well, those are lines operating at 1,000 pounds pressure. What you have in your house is ounces to maybe a couple pounds of pressure.
Okay.
But the gas can still accumulate inside the house. And gas has an explosive range from 5% to about 15%. And that's the area where it can, if you have an ignition source such as a spark, it would ignite and cause an explosion.
Yeah, gas is scary stuff.
Well, it's scary stuff, but it's a useful product if used appropriately, and people just need to be aware of the potential dangers for it.
Right. So, just to kind of switch it up, we've heard a lot about farm taps lately. Can you explain what a farm tap is and how that works?
Sure. A farm tap is an industry term.
Okay.
And it was used to designate a customer who got gas off a transmission or a gathering line as opposed to a distribution system.
Okay.
Usually a single customer. Now, there are what I call field taps that may serve multiple customers, but a farm tap was usually a single customer off of a transmission or a gathering line. And it was often done as a means of trying to provide incentive for somebody to sign a lease for their property so they could drill, or a right-of-way agreement. It was a means to allow that to happen.
Now, are farm taps still around? Are they a relic of the past? Will we phase them out eventually?
Farm taps are still around. We have probably between 15 and 20,000 of them in
Wow.
the state of West Virginia. Yes,
Wow.
we have a lot. They, like I say, they were used as an economic means and an economic incentive to get people to sign right-of-way agreements. A lot of the ones off the gathering lines are currently experiencing problems because the wells have aged out. They're not producing as much gas. So those wells can produce gas sufficient in normal times, but when we get colder weather, the wells don't produce enough gas and people lose their gas service. So it's becoming an issue. There are still provisions within the rules that if somebody wants a farm tap, we need to at least approach, or they need to approach the operator and see if the farm tap will be given. But probably in the last 10 years, there have been relatively few farm taps created.
Wow. So back to your projects that you guys are involved in. What about the Mountain State Pipeline? Are you all involved in that at all?
No.
What is it?
The Mountain Valley Pipeline?
Yeah,
No.
Mountain Valley Pipeline.
Mountain Valley Pipeline. No, we're not involved with it. That was a FERC certificated line. It was designed to take that Marcellus gas out of state and deliver it down to North Carolina. It was inspected by PHMSA but we are not interstate agents, so we were not involved.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on? We got about 3 minutes left.
Let's talk a little bit about 811.
Okay, absolutely. That's perfect.
811, of course, is the call before you dig law.
Yep.
And we expect anybody who is digging more than just a surface to call 811 48 hours before they dig. The idea is to protect not just gas or hazardous liquid lines. It's designed to protect any underground facilities. That includes fiber optics, it includes telephone lines, it includes electrical. The idea is that if you call, the owner of the facility will come and mark it.
Okay.
There is no cost to the person making the phone call.
Well, that's awesome.
Okay. The cost is, and then the operator of the facility is required to respond and mark the line. We're looking to change a few of the rules on 811 to reducing the size of tickets, but it's a free call and everybody needs to do it because there's nothing worse. We've had incidents in West Virginia where people have not called and gas lines have been hit and have caused major leaks and major inconveniences. And of course, the gas line is just one of it, but if you hit a fiber optic line, you can take an entire communication system out.
Right, that wouldn't be good. And if it's a free call, better safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Just do it.
811, yes.
811. All right. Well, we're about out of time for today. Thank you so much, Mary. We've learned a lot about gas pipeline safety.
Well, thank you for having me.
You have a lot of information, a lot of great experience. And check back in next time for Inside the PSC, where we take a look at the inner workings of the West Virginia Public Service Commission.